I stood in the living room of my parents' house, the same house I'd paid for every month for 2 years, when my mother screamed in my face, "You and your kid are dead weight." My father pointed toward the suitcase I'd packed for Milo and me. "Get out. Today." Behind them, Chloe held up her phone, live streaming with a smug little smile. I lifted Milo into my arms, my heart going numb. "They're throwing us out of the house I paid for." When I walked out of that house with Milo on my hip, the word dead weight kept replaying in my head like a bruise pulsing beneath skin. But the truth is, that moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the final drop in a bucket I'd been carrying for far too long. After my divorce, I came home with Milo in my arms, thinking it would be temporary, just a few weeks while I found a new place and rebuilt my life. But life never moves in straight lines. My mother, Ruth, lost her job first. Then my father, Thomas, was laid off. Their savings dried up faster than they admitted, and suddenly, my temporary stay became the backbone of the entire household. I started paying the mortgage because the bank notices made my mother cry. Then I covered the property taxes because my father said he'd handle it next month. That month never came. Soon it was the home insurance, the utilities, the repairs, every piece of the house was silently transferred into my responsibility. They called it being a good daughter. I called it being trapped. Meanwhile, Chloe, my younger sister, lived there rent-free, glued to her phone like TikTok royalty. She filmed videos in every room, bragging about my family's beautiful home, without ever mentioning who paid for it. She had convinced herself she was on the verge of influencer fame, which apparently excused her from doing anything useful. And then there was Milo. My sweet, bright-eyed boy who deserved softness and safety. Instead, he got sighs, rolled eyes, and comments that sliced deeper than anyone noticed. "He cries too much. You should find him a real father so he stops being a burden." Every time they said those things, something inside me tightened, but I told myself to let it go. Milo needed family, I thought. He deserved it, even if that family was imperfect. But the truth was uglier and sharper than that. There were moments, small ones, but they added up, when the betrayal showed through the seams. The day Thomas borrowed my credit card just for gas and returned with a trunk full of alcohol. The day I came home from work and discovered Milo's stroller was gone, because Ruth had sold it to help with groceries, yet I never saw groceries. The evening Chloe barged into my room and said she needed my space for her livestream setup, then pushed Milo's toys into a trash bag and told us to sleep on the sofa just for tonight. Tonight turned into a week. Then a month. Every time I spoke up, I was met with the same suffocating gaslighting. "You're too sensitive. Families shouldn't keep score." But they kept score. They always kept score, just never of what I gave. They didn't count the nights I stayed up late finishing freelance work so I could cover another bill Thomas forgot. They didn't count the mornings I skipped breakfast so Milo would have extra. They didn't count the 6 times I bailed Chloe out when she overdrafted her account. They didn't count the jobs I turned down to stay close enough to help them. The only thing they counted was what more they could take. I convinced myself I was staying for Milo. That even if they didn't love me the way I wished, maybe they could love him. Maybe having grandparents and an aunt would give him something I couldn't provide alone. But that illusion shattered the moment my mother screamed dead weight into my face. Not just at me, at my son. My 4-year-old baby, who had never done anything but try to be loved. That was the moment something in me finally clicked into place. The moment I stopped excusing them, stopped hoping they would change, stopped trying to earn a place in a family that only valued what I could pay for. As I carried Milo to the car that night, his little arms wrapped around my neck, a terrifying clarity settled into my chest. If they didn't see us as family, then what exactly was I breaking myself to hold together? It was the first time I let myself ask the question. And the last time I pretended not to know the answer. When I came back to the house that night, Milo asleep in his car seat, I told myself I was only there for his clothes and his favorite stuffed lion. Nothing else. No conversation. No more fighting. Just in and out. But when I opened the front door, the smell of roasted chicken and laughter drifted out like nothing had happened, like they hadn't kicked me and my son out of the home I paid for. My parents and Chloe were gathered around the dining table, plates full, glasses clinking. My chair at the table, the one I always sat in, was already gone. I stood there silently until Chloe finally glanced up, her fork freezing midair. "Oh," she said flatly, "you're back." My mother didn't even stop eating. My father didn't look at me. They carried on as though the screaming, the insults, the suitcase at the door, none of it had happened. I swallowed hard and said, "I'm here to get Milo's things." No one answered. And something in me snapped. "Actually," I said, stepping closer, "I want an answer first." My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. "Why would you call me dead weight after everything I've paid for?" That got their attention. My mother finally looked at me with that usual mix of annoyance and superiority. "Con noi qua," she said. "You're blowing things out of proportion." "Out of proportion?" I repeated. "You screamed in my face. In front of Milo." She shrugged. "Well, maybe you shouldn't take everything so personally." My father added, "This house is ours. You only stayed here. Don't act like you own it." I stared at him. "Dad, I've paid the mortgage for 24 months straight." Chloe snorted. "Please. You paid a few bills and now you think you're some hero?" "A few bills?" I pulled out my phone and opened the file I'd been quietly keeping, every payment, every transfer, every receipt. "Let's review." I read aloud. Mortgage, 24 months. Property taxes, 2 years. Homeowner's insurance. The new water heater. The roof repair. The renovation for the kitchen mildew you said you'd handle next month. And every grocery run for the last 10 months. Silence. But not the ashamed kind. The annoyed kind. My father slammed his hand on the table. "Families shouldn't keep score." I looked him in the eyes. "Families shouldn't exploit, either." For a moment, no one breathed. Then Chloe stood up, pointing at me like I was the problem. "If you're so unhappy, just leave." Something inside me, something that had been cracked and shaking for so long, finally went still. I looked around the room, really looked. At the house whose lights I kept on. At the family I'd carried like a weight strapped to my back. At the people who treated me like a walking wallet but called me dramatic for asking to be treated with basic respect. And suddenly, the tears stopped. All the shaking stopped. The begging stopped. I nodded slowly. "Okay." My mother frowned. "Okay what?" "Okay," I repeated. "I will leave." My voice didn't shake. Not even a little. Chloe's eyes widened, like she hadn't expected me to actually agree. My father opened his mouth, maybe to stop me, maybe to guilt-trip me, but the words never came. I didn't give him the chance. I walked past them, into the hallway, grabbing Milo's bag, his clothes, his lion, his books. I kissed his forehead where he slept peacefully in the car seat. Thank God he hadn't seen any of this. When I walked back into the dining room, they all stared at me as if I were the one leaving them. Not the other way around. I lifted the car seat. "You don't have to worry anymore," I said. "We won't burden you again." My mother rolled her eyes. "Don't be dramatic." You'll come back. You always come back. Not this time. I looked at all three of them one last time. You told me to leave. So I left. And now, I'm going to make sure everything I paid for is corrected. What does that mean? Thomas growled. It means, I said quietly, I'm done being your bank. And I'm getting back every dollar you pretended didn't exist. And for the first time in years, I felt something that tasted like freedom. I walked out of that house with my son, not as the girl they controlled, but as the woman who was finally ready to make them face the truth. Legally. Fully. And without fear. The night after I left my parents' house, I sat in my tiny temporary apartment, Milo asleep beside me, and stared at a screen full of numbers. Payments. Transfers. Receipts. 2 years of quietly keeping a household alive while being told I was dead weight. It all looked different when laid out in black and white, colder, sharper, undeniable. But I still didn't know what to do with it. That's when I messaged the only person I trusted with something this raw, Marcus Reyes. We'd gone to college together. He'd become a financial and real estate attorney. And he was one of the few people who had seen me during my divorce, messy, exhausted, hurting, but still fighting. He replied instantly. Come in tomorrow. Bring everything. The next morning, I walked into his office carrying 2 binders, a laptop, and a heart heavier than I wanted to admit. Marcus greeted me with a hug, then sat across from me, serious as ever. Okay. Tell me what happened. I told him everything. The screaming. The eviction. The bills. The 2 years of pretending it was normal. When I finished, he didn't speak for several seconds. Instead, he reached for my laptop. Let me see the documents. I slid it toward him. For the next 20 minutes, he scrolled. He zoomed in. He frowned. He took notes. With every new page, his eyebrows lifted higher. Finally, he pushed the laptop back and said, Lena, do you realize this is over $96,000? I swallowed. I knew it was a lot. I didn't know it was that. He leaned forward. These aren't gifts. These are mortgage payments, structural repairs, property taxes. In legal terms, this is unjust enrichment. Big time. The words hit me like a physical blow. Unjust enrichment. I had read about it. But hearing it applied to my family felt unreal. Marcus continued, you also have equitable interest in the property. Meaning, you've essentially financed the house. You have grounds to claim partial ownership. Ownership. The word felt foreign on my tongue. He started listing what he needed. Full statements for the past 2 years. Every invoice. Every repair order. Screenshots of any financial texts from your parents. And, he gave me a sympathetic look, any messages from Chloe asking for money for TikTok equipment. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but the truth of it burned. I have all of that. Good, he said. Then you also have a case. I opened my binder and added, there's more. Emails from my mother demanding I handle the roof situation. A voice memo from my father saying he would pay me back when things were stable. Chloe begging for money to buy lighting for a live stream. Marcus studied each piece like it was part of a puzzle he'd already solved. Then he looked at me, really looked at me. Lena, he said slowly, gently, do you realize you've financed the entire house? The room felt suddenly smaller. My breath tightened. Because for the first time, not as a daughter, or a sister, or a single mom trying to survive, but as a human being with blinders finally ripped away. I saw it. I wasn't dead weight. I was the foundation. The provider. The one holding everything together. And they had thrown me out of a house I paid for. Marcus's voice softened. You're not a burden, Lena. You're the victim of financial abuse. Victim. Not problem. Not inconvenience. Not weight. Something inside me shifted, small at first, then seismic. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I had to do. Marcus didn't waste time. He drafted the notice the next morning, a formal demand for reimbursement and a legal claim for equitable ownership of the house. Seeing it printed on letterhead felt unreal. My name, my evidence, my story finally written in a language my family couldn't twist. When Marcus sent the documents, the reaction was immediate. My phone lit up like a warning signal. 10 missed calls from my mother. 12 from my father. 6 from Chloe. 3 voicemails, one from each of them, cycling through the same frantic melody. Conque VD. We can fix this. You're misunderstanding. You're doing too much. Stop ruining the family. They had thrown me out without blinking, but the moment money got involved, suddenly I was essential again. I let every call ring. I let every voicemail sit unheard. I owed them nothing, not even the sound of me declining. When the date for the formal mediation arrived, I walked into the room with Marcus beside me and Milo's little lion toy tucked inside my purse like a talisman. Across the table sat my parents and Chloe, their lawyer stiff and uncomfortable. They looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in presence. In certainty. Thomas was the first to speak. This is ridiculous. She contributed because she wanted to help. No one forced her. Marcus didn't even blink. The payment record shows consistent and essential contributions for 24 months. Mortgage, taxes, insurance, structural repairs. That's not casual support. That's financial responsibility for the entire property. My mother dabbed her eyes with a tissue, the trembling act she saved for public displays. Con Boroy Gia Din. After everything we did for you, you turned on us. I forced myself not to react. If I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. Chloe leaned back in her chair, arms crossed, smirking. Lena is just jealous. Everyone knows Mom and Dad love me more. She can't stand it. Marcus opened the folder with the precision of a man unveiling a trap. Let's begin with the evidence. He laid out the documents one by one. First, bank statements proving monthly mortgage payments withdrawn from my account. Second, invoices for repairs, all billed to me. Third, screenshots of Chloe posting videos bragging, "Welcome to my family home, decorated by me," while not paying a single cent. Fourth, the moment that shifted the room. Marcus pressed play on the audio file of my mother screaming, "You and your kid are dead weight." My mother flinched as the words echoed around the conference room. Chloe went pale. My father's jaw clenched so hard I thought it might crack. Marcus continued, "This recording shows clear emotional abuse tied to financial exploitation." Furthermore, he slid a final document forward. This confirms Ms. Lena Hawthorne was the sole payer of the mortgage for 2 consecutive years. The opposing lawyer rubbed his forehead, sighed, and whispered the words that felt like a verdict. This is devastating. My parents looked at him in betrayal, as if he were the problem, not the mountain of evidence collapsing over them. The lawyer cleared his throat. Given the documentation, we recommend a settlement to avoid escalation. Our side is prepared to discuss partial ownership transfer. Partial? Marcus lifted an eyebrow. We're seeking 40%, plus partial reimbursement. Silence thickened. My father finally whispered, 40%? She doesn't deserve. I leaned forward, my voice steady. I deserve more than that. But I'm choosing peace. My mother cried harder. Chloe looked like someone had unplugged her spotlight. In the end, they signed. 40% ownership. Partial reimbursement. Legal acknowledgement of my contributions. When the mediator stamped the papers, I felt something break free inside me, a knot untying, a breath releasing, a decade lifting. As we walked out into the hallway, my parents hurried behind us. My mother reached out, Lena, wait. I turned, but not with anger. With clarity. You threw me and my son out of this house, I said. Today, I walked out on my own terms. They stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Maybe they were. I didn't owe them a goodbye. So I didn't offer one. Marcus opened the door, and I stepped through it. Leaving behind not just the house, but the version of myself that believed I had to accept pain to earn love. The house I once called home didn't last much longer after the mediation. Without my payments, the mortgage fell apart fast. Within 3 months, the bank issued a final notice, and Thomas and Ruth had no way to stop it. They lost the house. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel responsible for fixing anything. I didn't scramble to save them, didn't reach for my wallet, didn't fold under guilt. I simply watched from a distance as the house, the one they threw me and Milo out of, slipped from their grasp. Chloe took it the hardest. Without the house, she lost her content backdrop, her aesthetic family home, her supposed influencer lifestyle. She ended up renting a single room in someone else's apartment, no more perfect lighting, no curated angles, no hallway she could pretend was hers. Meanwhile, I began building something new. I used my portion of the settlement to buy a small condo in a quiet neighborhood, a place with warm hardwood floors, sunlight that spilled through every window, and a tiny second bedroom that Milo immediately claimed for his stuffed animals. It wasn't big. It wasn't glamorous. But it felt like breathing for the first time. Every night, after Milo fell asleep, I sat at my new kitchen table planning something I'd dreamed of quietly for years, a fund to help single mothers dealing with family-based financial abuse. I named it Milo's Start. Because everything I've rebuilt began with him. The first donation I made was from my own savings. It felt symbolic, like planting a seed in soil I finally owned. One evening, after a long day of work and playtime and paperwork for the foundation, I stepped onto the balcony. Milo was asleep inside, curled up with his lion. The breeze was cool, brushing against my face, carrying none of the bitterness I used to breathe in. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. I opened my journal, a fresh one this time, and wrote. Peace isn't given by family. Sometimes, you have to build it yourself. And for once, I believed every word. If there's one thing this journey taught me, it's this. Love without respect is not love. And a family without safety is not a family, it's a place you're conditioned to endure. For years, I was told I was a burden when I was the one holding everyone up. I was told I was dramatic when I was simply exhausted. Maybe you've heard those same words. Maybe you've been carrying more than anyone ever acknowledged. If you have, you're not alone. You're not wrong for wanting peace. You're not selfish for demanding respect. And you are never a burden for choosing yourself. If any part of my story echoes something in your own life, I'd like to hear it. Share your experience below, leave a comment, and tell your truth. And subscribe for more stories of emotional justice, quiet revenge, and the courage it takes to walk away.